Hello, my name is Troy, and by now you've already labeled me. Let's see, I'm white, middle-aged, male, goatee, shorter than average. If you look closely, you can see my ring and tell I'm married. And by my gray hair, so you can tell I have a daughter. She's dead. There's nothing wrong with the labels. They're natural. And they're neutral. All those things about me are true. What you do next with that information, though, is what's important. Jumping to stereotypes and assumptions about those labels is what gets them in trouble. Just as you know from your own experience, people don't know everything about you at first glance. You're not defined by your labels. At best, labels only tell part of the story. Going into the 2012 election, there were a lot of labels going around. The president was a black, liberal, Christian male, and he would eventually be challenged by a wealthy, white, conservative Mormon male. On top of that, there were rumors that they had secret labels, like being a rhino or a Muslim, or that they weren't even American. Much of the talk, though, seemed to be about creating fear or suspicion about these differences, and about this us versus them, rather than how to actually solve the problem they're facing. People that supported the candidates or belonged to the same groups that they belonged to, or were suspected to belong to, were being demonized based on the label. Of course, that's nothing new. Sometimes meeting people that are different can be fun and interesting, and other times it can be really uncomfortable, especially if you're used to hanging out with people that are very similar to you. It's too easy to focus on the differences and the labels rather than the actual person. But you see, ever since I was little, I've made a point to know a variety of people. I know a lot of thems, and they're pretty cool. I'm also in an interracial marriage. I'm raising a multiracial daughter, and I want to better understand and hopefully improve the world she was going to grow up in. One of the problems with that, though, is that there's a lot of people in the world. And from what you probably already noticed is that I'm an introvert. But it was important enough for me to go outside of my comfort zone, go outside that level, and between being a photographer, a web designer, and my weird sense of humor, I created a really cool project. The premise of the project was simple, that just because some aspects of a person are different from you, or you don't agree with them on some things, doesn't mean that they're evil as a whole. In fact, unless you have a secret fortress high in the mountains that are devising nefarious plots to bring about world destruction, you can be in the no evil project. Many of us were taught that it was taboo to talk about race, religion, and politics. So it's common to believe that to get along we should just not talk about differences. And when it comes to race, to act colorblind. And it's gotten to the point, though, that some people fear celebrating a holiday is offensive, and that just mentioning someone's race is being racist. For instance, my wife is black, yet she could be in a room full of white people. And if someone asked to point her out, they would come up with any kind of word to describe her other than black, which really would be the most simplest way to do that. Or if they do say she's black, they use it in that hushed tone, like that same voice says, we're uncomfortable talking about labels and differences. It's simpler and more comfortable for many people just to not talk about it, but people are different. So ignoring them doesn't make us learn more about them. And not learning about them just makes people rely on stereotypes even more, which makes things worse. So instead, I wanted to take a different approach and try to make those topics less taboo. I want to get people to talk about differences, so they can see, the people as people, and hopefully be able to stand and relate to people from these groups and understand where they're coming from, even if they may not agree with them. But more importantly, simply be comfortable around them. Too many times people use the fear of differences to divide us. If we could be more comfortable accepting that no one is exactly the same as us, it'd be easier to work together. And we can take power away from the people that try to blame other groups rather than solve problems, just hoping we don't know that. So how do we do that? My first goal was to help see people that are different from us as well people. Too many times when we start talking about labels, they're just a faceless group of stereotypes. I want to rehumanize those labels. Often stereotypes work simply because you don't know any people like that or think of it. I grew up in a city that was a pretty diverse school, but some of my grandparents lived in a small town in southern Minnesota. And diversity there was like, different kinds of Scandinavians. And sometimes there was someone that wasn't Lutheran. So once when I was little, I went to visit them, and my grandmother had big news. She was so excited to tell me that she had met a Negro yesterday, and how nice he was. And I'm like, okay, it wasn't that she was against black people. She just hadn't met. My dad hadn't met anyone that was black who went to college. And all she knew was what she'd known from TVs and movies and stereotypes. Experience fights stereotypes. My grandmother's experience reminds me of people today who are opposed to gay rights until they learn that one of their friends or family member is gay. It makes those labels human. Obviously, we can't meet every kind of person out there, but even just seeing photos of those people from those groups can put a face on the label. All of those people that are the project are real. Participants have their photos taken for the project and reinforce that different doesn't mean bad and definitely doesn't mean evil. They pose as the three wise monkeys: see evil, hear evil, and speak evil. And the poses kind of help break the ice too. Next was to emphasize the good. Too often we stereotype based on the negative actions of a member of a group that we see as different. I helped run an activity where we were talking to middle school kids about labels and stereotypes, and we divided them into thirds: positive, neutral, and negative. And as we read out the labels, the kids had to stand in the portion of the room that they thought that label applied. We got to the word Muslim, and one kid had a hard time figuring out where to stand. And in this day and age, that doesn't feel surprising, except the kid was Muslim. So we talked about it. He said that his family was awesome, but he kept hearing bad things in the news. So I asked him if he believed what he heard from others or his own personal experiences. And he jumped to the positive side of the room. But it just goes to show how positive negative stereotypes can be. Why can't good deeds represent a large group of people just as easily? So have all the people write one good deed they've done to show they're not evil. People come up with a little bit of everything, from saving life, to smiling at strangers, to nonprofits they work with, to rescuing worms from puddles after a rainstorm. There's a lot of good stuff going on out there that you just never hear about, because no one asks. And no matter what their labels, everyone can come up with something good that they've done. Finally, participants pick 3 labels that describe themselves. There's everything from race, religion, politics, sexuality, to medical conditions, to hobbies and occupations, to really, divisive things like favorite sports teams. You're probably trying to figure out what your 3 labels are right now. And it's true. It's common. But this is what starts the conversation. It's not easy. Taking a step back and being honest about these stereotypes is uncomfortable. It's easier when it's introspective. Because first you start thinking about how you label yourself. For starters, you have to think about more than 3. So you have to figure out which ones you want to pick. A lot of things come with a label, good and bad. So you have to decide whether it's something you want to share with the world or not. Then you start wondering, I wonder what other people label me as. Maybe you've been mislabeled in the past, and it's maybe something that you thought was negative, so you want to pick a label that shows them that they're wrong. Sometimes people pick obvious physical labels that can be seen. Other times, they pick things that you never guess because, they don't look like someone that has that label. And that's what leads you closer to thinking about how you label others. You start second-guessing the stereotypes and biases that you have. Originally, it was just going to be a few of my friends doing this run on Christian Peace. but there was this energy around it. And everyone I talked to liked it, and it started to grow. Then I was asked if the photos could go on big banners. And Hanover Theater was looking for a large-scale art project. So I met with the director that figuring out, I'd have to kind of picture some. And basically they walked in and like, where do you want your exhibit? But the spot that they wanted was 25 feet tall and 20 feet wide and 20 feet tall. So like, okay, we get more people. So we set up a booth at a craft festival. And they didn't really know how many people would have silly photos taken of them and put online. And apparently I was wrong. We photographed 230 people that day. So now we have people how they're going to pay for a food banners. Well, another one of my clients came forward and offered to write a grant proposal for me and got it. So with everyone working together, the Hanover exhibit contained 250 people. It was up for over a year. So since a physical exhibit was my original goal, and we've done that in a few months, we kept going, photographing more festivals. The colleges invited us to photograph there to raise awareness about diversity. Then we started going to pride festivals, disability groups, worked with senior centers to fight ageism, I photographed homeless people and refugees from other countries. We moved on to tattoo conventions to challenge stereotypes of people with tattoos. Other groups have joined in and having their own events in other states, even as far away as Malaysia. They're doing medieval project photo shoots now. All the people we photograph are up on the website and Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Tumblr, but we create physical exhibits as well. Thompson Public Library, UMass Library, Nichols Dean College commission me to do stuff. Photograph their students for permanent installations at their schools. Our largest exhibit is in the Dental Building in Worcester, where we have 1,456 people on the walls. They basically just let us come in and wallpaper the hallways with people. And I get comments from people working there how much they love it, but how much it distracts them, and they find themselves reading the walls every time they're supposed to be going to a meeting or something. And that was up for 2 years. A couple years ago, there were some incidents at North High in Worcester, and the media was really focused on it. And it got to the point that there's only a few students that are actually causing the problems, but the students that went, all the students that went there were getting stereotypes as bad kids. And some felt they were bad just because they went to the school. So we brought the project there. And as with other aspects of the project, we planned something small and ended up going really big. Instead of just setting up a booth in the cafeteria or something, photographing whoever wanted to be done, the teachers worked together and every student did exercise, coming up with a little good deeds, and as a writing assignment. In the art department, we did projects about it. And then at the end of the week, I came in and photographed about a third of the students, and I was taking pictures of someone every 20 to 30 seconds. And in the end, we created an exhibit featuring about a third of the school, and we had it up for the Get to Know Your School night, so we're all parents come. And the teachers and the parents talked to me, and they're amazed by what the students have written. They asked me how I got that up so much when normally people that age are really guarded. But there's just something about the project and the energy there. This was one of my most rewarding activities and something I want to do more of. I've now photographed over 6,000 people for the project. I've watched the silly photos that help people get over the discomfort. I've had some really great conversations about taboo topics with total strangers. And at that high school, some students picked out labels that sometimes even their friends didn't know about, like their sexuality, or that they deal with depression, or alcoholism, or being a rape survivor. They put themselves out there not only to challenge the stereotypes, but they want other people with those labels to know that they're not alone. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of misunderstanding and fear about differences in the world. You can see the harm it causes when people treat others badly. But that fear can also cause people to turn their backs on those in need, which we're seeing as well. And it can seem really overwhelming right now. especially when some people are even encouraging that fear for their own gain. But everyone can do their part to help bring together people rather than dividing them. So today I'm asking you to step out of your comfort zone and reach out to people you normally wouldn't. Have those awkward conversations with your friends. Challenge those stereotypes. Show what defines you. It can be uncomfortable, but it's important. The more conversations we start, the more we learn about all the great things that people are doing in the community, no matter who they are or who we think they are. The more we talk, the more we find in common with people we thought were so different, and that can change everything. Today after the service, I invite all of you to get your photos taken and participate in the project and see where it takes you.